Good morning, y'all. I want to do something a little different at the start of this video and zoom way out. Not to one storm, not to one outbreak, not to one day, but to the entire atmospheric picture developing over the next 10 to 14 days. Because what I am looking at in the model data this morning is not a single event. It is not even two events. It is a sequence, a multi-storm, multi-week, cascading series of severe weather setups that are building on top of each other with a regularity and a coherence that I have to be honest with you about right now, clearly, before it all arrives, because the time to understand a sequence like this is before the first storm fires. Not in the middle of it when you're trying to figure out whether today's event is the worst one or whether something even more significant is still coming behind it. That is the conversation I want to have with you this morning. Not about one storm, about the sequence, about why this spring is behaving the way it is, about what the atmosphere is telling us is coming, and about what every person in the broad corridor of concern, from Texas through the southern and central plains, through the mid-Mississippi Valley, and into the Ohio Valley, needs to understand and do right now to be ready for what is building. Let me start by giving you the scoreboard for 2026 so far, because I think it matters for context, and I think a lot of people do not have a complete picture of how active this season has already been before we even get to what is coming next. The 2026 tornado season opened in January with tornadoes in Oklahoma. February brought 55 preliminary tornado reports across the country. And then March. March was historic. In the first week of March, a mother and daughter were killed by an EF2 tornado near Fairview, Oklahoma, when their vehicle was struck while driving on US 60. Days later in Michigan, a cyclic supercell that produced an EF2 tornado through Three Rivers, a destructive high-end EF3 near Union City that killed 3 people and swept homes off their foundations, prompting a state of emergency from the governor. Then on March 10th, one of the most violent individual supercells of the young year produced an EF3 tornado that carved a 35-mile path from Kankakee, Illinois into Lake Village, Indiana, killed 3 people, destroyed 30 homes, damaged nearly 500 buildings, and dropped a 6-inch diameter hailstone that may have set a new Illinois state record, the largest hailstone recorded east of the Mississippi River. By March 29th, the storm prediction. Center was already tracking 274 preliminary tornado reports nationwide for the year. Then April arrived, and this month has delivered one of the most sustained, multi-round, geographically broad, severe weather outbreaks the central United States has seen in years, more than 100 preliminary tornado reports in April alone. 3 particularly dangerous situation tornado warnings in a single day on April 17th, an EF3 tornado near Cream, Wisconsin, an EF2 in Rochester, Minnesota, an EF2 in Lena, Illinois that tore the roof off the high school while students were inside, widespread flash flooding, and over 100,000 power outages across 3 states simultaneously. I'm giving you all of that not to overwhelm you. I'm giving you all of that because it is the foundation on which everything I'm about to tell you about the coming storm sequence needs to be understood. This season is not a slow-building, gradually escalating, normal spring season. It is a front-loaded, high-energy, relentlessly active season that has been running in an aggressive gear since the first week of March. And the atmospheric pattern that has been driving that activity is not exhausted. It is not winding down. It is reloading. And the reason it keeps reloading, the reason this season keeps producing outbreak after outbreak after outbreak rather than cycling into a quiet stretch and staying there, comes down to one thing that I want to spend some real time explaining because it is the single most important scientific concept for understanding why this storm sequence is building right now and why it is going to keep building through the rest of April and into May. That concept is the dying La Nina. For the past several months, the tropical Pacific Ocean has been in a La Nina state, cooler than normal sea surface temperatures in the central and eastern equatorial Pacific that influence the global atmospheric circulation in ways that are very well documented and very well studied. One of the primary effects of La Nina on spring weather across the United States is that it tends to amplify the western trough pattern, the persistent dipping of the jet stream over the western and central United States that drives repeated severe weather setups across the southern and central plains. La Nina keeps the low-level jet stronger and more persistent, keeps Gulf moisture streaming northward more aggressively, and keeps the temperature contrast between the returning Gulf warmth and the retreating polar air sharper and more energetic. All of those things are ingredients for severe weather. But here is what is critically important about where we are right now in this La Nina cycle. It is dying. The tropical Pacific is transitioning toward neutral conditions and then toward a potential El Nino by midsummer. And that transition phase, that specific window between a dying La Nina and an emerging El Nino, is historically the most dangerous phase of the ENSO cycle for tornado and severe weather production across the southern and central plains. Research shows the chances of a tornado outbreak increase across the plain states by up to 50% during years with a dying La Nina in spring. The 1974 super outbreak, 148 tornadoes in a single day. The 2011 super outbreak, 367 tornadoes in a single year. Both occurred during exactly this La Nina to neutral transition. I am not predicting a super outbreak. I'm telling you that the large-scale climate pattern driving this spring's activity is one of the most historically dangerous pattern types for the southern and central plains, and that it is currently at or near its peak influence. That is the context. That is the engine. And that engine is still running. Now, let me tell you exactly what the current model data is showing for the next 10 to 14 days, because context is only valuable when it connects to a specific and actionable forecast. Here is what is building. The first piece of the sequence is already in motion. A Pacific mid to upper level trough is crossing the west coast right now, pushing precipitation into California and heavy mountain snow into the Sierra Nevada. The Weather Prediction Center's latest extended forecast discussion, issued Sunday, April 19th and valid through Saturday, April 26th, is explicitly tracking this system as it crosses the Great Basin, the Intermountain West, and the Northern Rockies before ejecting eastward into the northern plains by midweek. Their forecast language is direct. This system will bring very strong winds and widespread precipitation across the northern Rockies and high plains. As it ejects into the plains, it is going to interact with the surging Gulf moisture that is already being pumped northward by the strengthening southerly flow ahead of it, and the WPC is already flagging episodes of heavy rain and severe weather becoming more likely Thursday and Friday as that interaction intensifies. That is round one of the sequence, Thursday and Friday of this week. The central and southern plains through the mid-Mississippi Valley. But the sequence does not end there. And this is the part I need you to pay very close attention to, because the second piece of the sequence is already showing up in the extended ensemble guidance in a way that is consistent enough to take seriously. The Climate Prediction Center's own probabilistic hazards outlook, a product that extends beyond the normal SPC convective outlook window and looks at week 2 hazards using ensemble model data, is showing a second shortwave trough system tracking from the western Conus toward the Great Lakes region in the week 2 period, with another surface low developing in the lee of the Rockies as it does. Their ensemble solutions are showing greater than 50% in probabilities of 3-day precipitation accumulations, exceeding 1 inch across a corridor covering the southern plains, the Tennessee Valley, the Ohio Valley, and the lower and middle Mississippi Valley. The language in that discussion is careful and appropriately hedged for the lead time, but the signal is there. It is consistent across multiple ensemble systems, and it is pointing at another significant weather-producing system arriving in the late April to early May timeframe, stacking directly on top of the same corridor that has been getting hit all month. Let me explain why the word sequence in this video's title is doing very important work, because I think the difference between a sequence and a series of isolated events is actually a profound difference when it comes to the human and physical impact of what is building. And when a single severe weather event hits a dry, quiet, recovered region, the atmosphere and the landscape are primed to receive it. The soils are dry. The rivers are at normal levels. The trees are fully rooted in firm ground. The infrastructure is intact. That same event, arriving as the third or fourth installment in a rapid sequence of storms, hitting the same corridor within a matter of days or weeks, lands on a completely different physical reality. Right now, across Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, Illinois, Iowa, and the surrounding states, the landscape has been saturated and battered by round after round of heavy rainfall since states are running elevated. Soil moisture anomalies are at or above the 90th percentile across broad portions of the southern and central plains. And now, on top of all of that, a sequence of 2 more significant storm systems is building for the next 10 days. Arriving on a fresh, dry landscape, the WPC's own ensemble tools are already flagging a slight risk of heavy precipitation for portions of the southern plains, the Tennessee Valley, the Ohio Valley, and the lower and middle Mississippi Valley in the late April and early May timeframe. When heavy precipitation falls onto fully saturated soils over terrain like the Ozark Plateau and the Arkansas River Valley, and the river basins of central Kansas and Oklahoma, the flood response is not gradual. It is immediate. Water that cannot soak into the ground runs off instantly into creek channels that are already running high and river systems that are already above normal. I have said this in every video this month, and I am going to keep saying it, because people keep driving into floodwater and dying every single severe weather season in this country. Please, do not drive through water on a road, not during round 1 of this sequence, not during round 2, not in daylight, not in the dark, not on a road you have driven 1,000 times. Turn around, don't drown, every time. Every single time. That is not a suggestion. That is the difference between being alive on the other side of this sequence and not being alive. I want to spend some time on the tornado threat specifically, because the atmospheric setup assembling for the Thursday-Friday round of this sequence has been increasingly well resolved across multiple modeling systems over the past 48 hours, and what the models are showing is genuinely concerning. The SPC's own day 4.8 outlook issued Friday, still the most recent extended outlooks available, flagged the possibility of a consolidated mid-level trough arriving over the Central Plains by Thursday, with mid-60-degree dew points already showing up consistently in the extended guidance across the plains and into the Midwest. The WPC's extended forecast is confirming temperatures running 20 to 30 degrees above normal across the central United States on Wednesday before the cold front arrives, which means by Wednesday night and Thursday morning you are going to have a warm sector over the southern and central plains that is extraordinary for late April. Surface temperatures in the upper 80s to near 90 degrees over Oklahoma, and Kansas sitting on top of mid-60-degree dew points, producing ML Cape values that the current guidance is suggesting could run in the 3,000 to 4,000 joule per kilogram range in the most unstable portions of the warm sector. Let me say that in plain terms, the thermodynamic fuel available for Thursday's storms could be comparable to or greater than the fuel that powered Friday, April 17th's outbreak, the one that produced 3 PDS tornado warnings, an EF3 tornado near Cream, Wisconsin, an EF2 in Rochester, Minnesota, and more than 100 tornado warnings across the central United States in a single day. That is the level of instability that is potentially assembling for Thursday, on top of whatever wind shear the trough system produces as it ejects across the plains, and then behind it, the sequence continues. The second system in the late April to early May window is going to find an atmosphere that has been repeatedly charged with Gulf moisture for weeks, soils that are fully saturated, rivers that are running high, and communities that are physically and psychologically fatigued from what has already been one of the most demanding springs in recent memory. Forecast fatigue is real. Community fatigue is real. The psychological tendency, after surviving 3, 4, 5 rounds of a severe weather sequence, to start treating each new round with diminishing urgency. That tendency is one of the most dangerous things that can happen in exactly this kind of sustained outbreak pattern. And I am asking every person watching this video right now to make a conscious, deliberate decision not to let that happen. To treat the next warning, the next watch, the next tornado-producing storm in this sequence with the exact same urgency and exactness of preparation as the first one, because the storm that kills you does not know it is the fourth one this month. It just fires, it tracks, and it does what its atmospheric ingredients tell it to do. And the only variable you control is whether you are prepared and in your shelter when it arrives. Here's the action plan I need every person in the potential corridor to execute this week. And I mean this week, not when the storms are already firing. First, if there's any property damage from April's previous round still, unaddressed at your home, a compromised shelter, a damaged roof, a flooded basement, address it today. Repairs take time, and you may have less time than you think before the next round arrives. Second, check your local river and stream gauges right now and bookmark the USGS Water Watch page for your area. Know what your local waterway is running at this morning, and keep checking it daily through the sequence. Third, make sure Y'all Call is active. I cannot say this enough. The overnight tornado threat from the low-level jet strengthening behind these systems is documented. It is consistent across multiple events this month, and it is the specific threat type that most commonly causes casualties because people are asleep when the warnings are issued. A direct phone call to your number when a tornado warning polygon covers your exact location is not a luxury. In a sequence like this one, it is essential. $14.95 for a full year of coverage. Link is in the description below this video. Please set it up today. Fourth, and this one is critically important in a sustained sequence, take care of yourself physically. Get real sleep this week during the quiet windows. Eat, rest, stay hydrated. I know that sounds like strange advice in a severe weather forecast video, but I mean it with complete sincerity. The people who make the best decisions in the 30-second window between hearing a siren and getting into a shelter are the people who are rested, clear-headed, and physically present, not the people running on 3 days of anxious, interrupted sleep and stress eating from a week and a half of consecutive weather events. Take care of yourself so you can take care of the people around you when the next round arrives. And fifth, share this video right now, today. Text it, post it, put it in your neighborhood app. Share it everywhere it might reach. Someone who is in the corridor of this sequence and does not yet understand that what is coming is not one more isolated storm. Building, layered, sustained series of severe weather events arriving in rapid succession on top of a landscape that is already stressed and on top of communities that are already fatigued. That framing, that sequence framing, is what I think is missing from most of the coverage of this spring. And it is what every person in the affected states needs to understand before Thursday arrives. I am going to be covering every round of this sequence as it develops. Dedicated forecast videos as the specific threat details come into focus. Live coverage the moment the first storms fire. I will be right here every tornado report, every flooding creek, every community that needs to know what is heading toward it, all the way through until the last system in this sequence has passed and every person in its path is safely on the other side. That is what this channel does. That is what the Y'all Squad is. Subscribe if you're not already. Hit the bell so you do not miss a single update as this sequence unfolds. Set up Y'all Call before Thursday. And stay engaged, y'all, because a massive storm sequence is building and the time to understand it is right now. I love y'all. Stay safe out there. Word count. Thrice 300 words.